Welcome to the review of my next 1/44th scale build. As I already said in the unboxing video, I do not like this library, so I came up with something different. If you want to see in detail how I built and painted this F-16, sit back and stay tuned. Oh, and just so everyone watching knows how small 1/44th scale is. Alright, so the first thing when assembling these kits is mostly the cockpit. I airbrushed the whole cockpit area in this dark gull grey and brush painted the rest. This time I did not put as much effort into it as usual, but moved on with the assembly of the aircraft. The cockpit was fitted into the canopy, and after that I glued the main landing gear bay in place. Next up I glued the wings to the lower part of the fuselage and used a bit more glue and a clothespin so these gaps would be closed. Still there were a few gaps, but for now I moved on with the assembly and added the rudders, stabilizers and nose. After I had painted the landing gear base in white, I temporarily closed them using liquid mask. That way the inside is protected and the overall paint job will be smoother. Next up I masked off the major gaps for easier cleaning afterwards. Once again I used milliput, which is a 2-part epoxy putty. You just mix it thoroughly and, what I find works best, add a bit of water to it. That way you get a nice consistency that makes it easy to smear the milliput into the gaps. I also did not notice any shrinking of the milliput so far. After removing the masking tape, I used a wet cotton bud to remove the excess putty. Usually filling and sanding isn't a lot of fun, but milliput makes it a quite enjoyable process. The result still wasn't perfect, but the larger gaps were filled, so I primed the F-16 with a 50-50 mix of Mr. Finishing Surfacer and Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. As I said before, I'm no big fan of the Lone Star Gunfighter squadron markings, so I decided to go another route. There are probably hundreds of nice paint jobs for F-16s, but I always liked Splinter camos. Furthermore, I did not have any other decals than those provided by the kit, so only a bit of extra painting was needed to do this Alaskan aggressor scheme. I started by painting the grey all over the F-16 and masked off the white areas. I used Hataka's Traffic White for that. As you can see, I had big problems with my airbrush again. The paint just wouldn't come out properly, no matter how thin the paint and how clean the airbrush. After all the problems I had with the airbrush in the past, I concluded that it's not only my own lack of skill, there seems to be a problem with the seals. The needle is bent and my compressor is quite weak. Therefore I got myself a new airbrush as well as a proper compressor to finally replace my cheap and loud compressor that I used for the last 4 years or so. Anyways, with a lot of patience, sweat and tears, I could finally finish the white and remove the tape. The result was okay, but some further masking and airbrushing was required. Some minor issues appeared with overspraying and the paint seeping under the masking tape. The next step was to paint the black areas. Again I masked off a part of the sections and tried to airbrush them. Tried, because again the airbrush played tricks on me. First the paint had dried in the nozzle and the airbrush would just splatter the paint all over the place. Later it would spray just fine, even though I had left the paint in the airbrush without cleaning it. In the long run it worked, but I'm really looking forward to using my new equipment on the next builds. Despite the complexity of masking and the problems with the airbrush, I was quite happy with the final outcome of the paint job. But the next challenge already waited. Since I only had the kit's decals, I had to find a way to paint the Alaskan squadron markings. Therefore I printed the letters, numbers and even the map of Alaska on a sheet of masking paper. Because of their tiny size, it was really difficult to precisely cut them out. I stick the individual letters to the horizontal stabilizer, even this tiny part of the letter A. Then I masked the surroundings and airbrushed it. A few corrections had to be made and the result was okay, but I thought I can get a similar result by just using a fine panel liner. Therefore I only airbrushed the larger letters and the map of Alaska and wrote the 354th Fighter Wing insignia on the stab with a pen. Next up I used the stencils provided by the Revell kit, even though some of them come in the wrong color. This worked well, so I moved on to mounting the smaller bits and pieces. The landing gear was quite fiddly, but that's often the case in this scale. Because of the problems with the airbrush, I did a lot of brush painting on this kit. After the assembly was finished, I applied a dark wash and used these makeup applicators to clean it up. The reason for that is that cotton buds often leave small fibers all over the model. So here you can see the finished Alaskan F-16C in Arctic Splinter camo. It's not 100% accurate, but I just used what I had and I think this version looks way better than the lone gunfighter livery. Masking and the troubles with my airbrush delayed this project quite a bit, but overall I'm quite satisfied with the kit, and I give it a scale model score of 47 points out of 70. I'm really looking forward to the next model, where I'll try out my new airbrush and compressor. Also I got myself some literature about diorama creation, because I got so many ideas in my head. If you want to see what's next, subscribe and check out the links in the description if you want to support my small channel. Also leave me your comments about the F-16, I'd really like to hear your opinions. So thanks for watching and bye!